that's really my focus, okay, is I want to let people prosper. And a big part of that is by having an educated workforce, educated people, voting, right? All these different things. And we're not going to get that as long as we have this monopoly government school system. Hello, welcome to this week's economy. I'm your host, Dr. Vance Ginn. Thank you for joining me again today. Well, I've got a lot to bring to you. It's right before the election. Get out and vote. It's going to be an interesting time over the next few days. Hopefully, we'll know who is president pretty quickly and who has control of the Senate and the House. It'll be interesting, but I'm going to continue to provide insights that you're going to want to hear no matter who's president, so that way we can make sure that we can let people prosper, as you already know what I'm going to say each and every time. So let's get right to it, okay? Number one, big Trump tax and spending plans. In the news, during the election, Trump has proposed several tax exemptions, but his latest plan was the most sweeping. He aimed to eliminate federal income taxes, yes, and replace them with tariffs. At a recent campaign rally, Elon Musk announced he would join a Trump administration to cut $2 trillion in government spending as part of a task force focused on reducing government spending. And look, I'm all about government spending. So this is my take, okay, is that we need to find ways to cut government spending. I'm a little skeptical of what exactly Elon Musk will find and whether or not Congress will go along with it. Because remember, at the end of the day, Congress has the power of the purse, not the president. Now, as I was a part of OMB at the Office of Management and Budget in the Trump White House in the first administration, there is a lot of maneuvering you can do to sweep money around. There are also other ways like the Impoundment Act and sequestration. So there are different ways to try to reduce some spending, but those are pretty small compared to the large deficits that we're running each year of $2 trillion. So basically what that means is we're bringing in a couple $1 trillion a year in revenue, but then we're spending well more than that. And so this is really a spending crisis, not a tax revenue issue that we really need to get control of quickly, okay? And so this is a good sign, though, I think, in general, that Elon Musk wants to help out. I don't think we need to create another office or agency or committee or something like that. Let's do it within what's already there. But I would like to see more efficiency audits, maybe external efficiency audits of third parties to come in. Instead of having the fox guard the hen house within government, is have someone from the outside come in, and those who understand business can deal with these sort of inefficiencies, not meeting their goals and everything else. And so I think those things could be a good thing. At the same time, we've got to get off from this idea of raising taxes through tariffs, okay? I mean, even if we want to eliminate income taxes, which I'm a fan of, I would like to see us move to a national consumption tax, a flat consumption tax with the broadest base possible, and get rid of the 16th Amendment that imposed our first income tax, or at least put it in place as an income tax in the United States. But a tariff is not the way to do it. If you have the tariff high enough, I think we need like a 70 or 80% tariff in order to bring in the same amount of personal income taxes, which is about a little over $2 trillion, okay? We would need a substantially high tariff on everything. And what would that do? That would reduce our demand from those imports from other countries. But then where do we get it from? Is it going to be produced in America right away? That's unlikely. You've got to build manufacturing plants. You got to get people to work in there and everything else. And that I just don't think is realistic of the situation that we're in. This all goes into the idea that offshoring and building things in other countries hollowed out the Rust Belt in the Midwest, Ohio, and things of that nature. But that had to do more with automation. That had to do more with the state policies of large unions and labor unions. And so they moved a lot to the South, actually, in places like Texas, where I'm at, or Tennessee, that had right to work laws instead. And then also lower income taxes and no income taxes in those states. And at the end of the day, too, we need to be lowering our corporate income tax and think about broader based things to allow for lower costs of doing business in America. That's how we could be more competitive. We need to be thinking about lowering the federal minimum wage. Remember, the real minimum wage is always $0. If you don't have a job, you don't have a wage at all. Okay. Those are the types of things that are going to head us in the right direction versus raising tariffs and, you have these trade wars that go on. I mean, all this does is lead to more economic uncertainty for the manufacturing plants that are already here. And the other thing to think about is that manufacturing output continues to reach record levels. Employment has went down as they become more productive and there's more automation and everything else. So the more that we push in that direction of raising costs and everything else, because the other thing I want to mention here is that tariffs, the things that we're importing, a lot of those are intermediate goods that businesses use to make their final products that that they sell in America. It's not all just final goods that we're buying here in America. And so that also creates a lot of other distortions, higher prices and things of that nature throughout our economy. It's just not a good idea, okay? So let's stick to cutting spending, all right? Let's balance the budget, let's not raise taxes, and let's find a better tax system. I'm all on board with that, but let's not go down the tariff route, okay? That's not the way that we should go. Number two, the upcoming Federal Open Market Committee meeting. The FOMC will meet on Wednesday and Thursday, November 6th and 7th, with Fed Chair Jerome Powell holding a press conference afterwards. Many economists anticipate a 25 basis point interest rate cut, so that'd make it to 4.5 to 4.75%, because that's the range that they have it, okay, of 25 basis points. Look, I mean, the Fed's primary responsibility is to control inflation. The latest inflationary data that came out from the PCE index showed that inflation year over year through September was up about 2.2%. But if you exclude food and energy, so you look at the less volatile area, more of the driving force of inflation over time, it was up 2.7%. That's well above their average inflation rate target of 2%. And they like to look at that core PCE. That's the one that they really put a lot of insight and really put a lot of talk of saying, let's focus in on that one. And it's at 2.7%. So well above the 2% rate. This is one reason why I think we don't need to be cutting interest rates right now. They should really be cutting their balance sheet, which still remains around $7 trillion. The money supply is already increasing again. So there's inflationary pressures that are all around us. And I don't want to see is repeating the past mistakes that were made during the 1970s and other periods of time whenever they had this stop-start sort of push and pull within monetary policy. That's not the sort of situation we want. We need a rules-based monetary policy. I think that should come in the form of more of a monetary growth or a balance sheet growth rule. But other ones that I think are good ideas, like the Taylor rule as well. And so at the end of the day, we need Congress to stop spending so much, which is leading to the debt, which is then contributing to how much the Fed can buy of that debt and print money and put it out into the economy and create the inflation and distortions that are throughout the economy. Let's not repeat the mistakes of the past. Let's learn from those lessons and start doing something better. And so I'm hopeful that will be the case. Number three, school choice success. In the news, a new report from even the Progressive Policy Institute, highlights the success of school choice, specifically showing how charter schools are helping level the academic playing field for low-income students. The study found that in 10 cities where charter school enrollment exceeded 33%, student performance began closing the gap with statewide averages by 25 to 40%. My take on this is that school choice is what drives competition. We need more competition in the education market. The monopoly government school system of the traditional public schools is really led the way. A lot of overfunding that's been happening there over time when you look across the country. And even with some of the school choice efforts that have been put in place, those are small. This is a chump change compared to the massive amounts of billions of dollars that we're spending on this education system and not getting good results. And that's really the focus of my focus, is I want to let people prosper. And a big part of that is by having an educated workforce, educated people, voting, right? All these different things. And we're not going to get that as long as we have this monopoly government school system. So charter schools are also government created, but they're privately run. So they're government funded, privately run. And so they are government schools in that capacity, but it does allow for more competition in the market. And what you see with charter schools is that they usually have long waiting lines because everybody wants to go there to get out of those traditional public schools. But it is creating more competition than we otherwise would have, which is showing the results are positive here. And so I think what we really should see is even broader school choice with universal education savings accounts. That way anyone can go to any school that they choose, whatever type of schooling that it is. And I just think that's the way, that's free market capitalism, It's not this socialist mentality of you can only go to this one box institution. We've got to get away from that, not only in education, but healthcare, transportation, a whole lot of areas. So this is interesting to see, though, from a progressive outfit, it's a think tank providing this sort of research. As maybe we're turning the corner to where more people are starting to understand the benefits, Number four, Texas draft AI bill needs work. In the news this week, Texas State Representative Giovanni Capriglione introduced draft legislation. He's a Republican here in Texas, establishing a regulatory framework for artificial intelligence, AI, modeled after Colorado's law and the work of Connecticut State Senator James Maroney, who's a Democrat. The bill would make Texas the largest state with a new framework. While well-intended, there are many concerns with the bill as it would prohibit AI-enabled discrimination in areas like banking, housing, and government services and hurt small businesses innovators with large penalties, thereby benefiting quote-unquote big tech with large barriers to entry. What I see from this is that this is a huge risk to innovation. Texas has a thriving economy and growing tech sector, making it a hub for businesses, where it has become this quote-unquote Silicon Valley of the South, even better than the California version, okay? But thoughtful AI legislation is needed to make sure that this innovation can continue to take place in Texas as you have the tech sector and AI and everything expand. We need to avoid regulatory overreach. What I'm seeing is too much AI regulation in different areas of discrimination, open source AI, a number of other areas that we should let the marketplace work and allow for current law to set the stage for what AI should be doing. If it's legal today in the current law, make it illegal for AI as well, but don't go any further than that, because then you're reducing innovation. You're reducing the amount of benefits that we're going to get over time. And so a better approach is actually what I saw when I was at the White House under the Trump administration from the Council of Economic Advisors, many within OMB, but it was against excessive AI regulation. I put this in the show notes page, a link to it, but you're favoring a market-driven process to progress that remains cautious about regulatory overreach. There's also good model legislation by the American Legislative Exchange Council on AI that provides a good framework to consider. However, I'm not too fond of them wanting to create a new Office of Artificial Intelligence policy, but that could be folded into an existing office without new resources. But the key part here is to make sure that the framework doesn't impinge or restrict the amount of AI that we're going to be able to use, because I think it's going to revolutionize everything, whether it be education, healthcare, transportation, just our daily lives. I mean, I'm already using ChatGPT to help me create a lot of my show notes and everything pages. There's just a lot of things that we don't even know what's going to come up yet. Let's not stifle it for the future. All right. Number 5, new economic reports. In the news, last week, reports of U.S. GDP and job openings were released, showing 2.8% GDP growth, while job openings fell to a 3.5-year low. Meanwhile, the personal consumption expenditures that I mentioned earlier increased 2.7% for inflation year over year, which excludes food and energy. Look, my take on this is that we're seeing job openings are starting to drop some, which makes sense as we get further along within this, what seems to be an expansionary period for a while, right? Much of the decline of job growth was concentrated in the South, where hurricanes Helene and Milton impacted local economies. But before the hurricanes, those are the areas that were really leading a lot of the job growth as well. So my guess is that those jobs will come back online, even though from their reports is showing a distance there. There's also a jobs report that I'm recording this before the jobs report comes out for October. So I'll talk about that next week. But my guess is we're going to continue to see somewhat strong reports, but we're going to have those revisions downward. And a lot of people have still dropped out of the labor force. And so this is still a tough situation where average weekly earnings are down adjusted for inflation since January of 2021. The big government Bidenomics policies just didn't work. Okay. It's one reason why I'm so worried about Harris's policies as well. I'm also worried about some of the ones of Trump's, as I mentioned many times. So let's see what happens. When you look at real GDP, though, in the third quarter, it did show that 2.8% growth rate, which seems strong, okay? But if you strip out the government purchases, government is just redistributing money. It's not any productive activity. You get down to 1.95% growth in Q3. So that's a much weaker growth rate than what's headline numbers are presenting out there. So instead, we need a pro-growth approach of lower taxes, free market policies, less regulation, less government spending. That's the way we get more productivity, more economic growth for the economy. So I hope we see more of that soon. Number 6, state tax competitiveness. In the news, a new report from the Tax Foundation compares states on the 5 major areas of taxation. It provides a great overview of the burden of funding government and spending in different ways. All right. So in general, it shows the impact of personal income taxes. States ranked in the top 10 generally have no personal income taxes or very low or flat income taxes, while those in the bottom 10 carry the highest marginal personal income tax rates in the country. So you think in the top 10, you have your New Hampshires, you have Florida, Tennessee, Texas in there as well, Wyoming. In the bottom 10, you've got California, New York. I mean, you kind of think about Illinois, those types of states that really have higher taxes. And he looks at not only individual income taxes, but corporate income taxes, franchise taxes, unemployment insurance taxes. I recommend you go out and look at it and look at my show notes page as well for more on that. But we've also got to remember that government spending matters. Why are they taxing the way they do? Because they want to spend so much. And so we've really got to get spending under control, or we're not going to get taxes under control. And remember, if you restrain spending to no more than population growth plus inflation, you can use the surplus as the economy continues to grow faster than that. Revenue would then grow faster than that, and use the surpluses to reduce your income taxes, reduce your property taxes or something else. And to do this at the state and local level. It's not just good enough to do it at the state level. You got to do it at the local level too. That's the lessons we've been learning in Texas for many years, as we have these blueberries in a sea of red, right? But even at the federal level, we should be doing more of this as well. Spending is the problem, not revenue, okay? Number 7, soaring Texas housing cost. In the news, despite Texas' booming economy, residents face record high home prices and rent due to severe housing shortages. My take is we need to find ways to expand the housing supply, reduce local regulations and restrictive zoning laws, allow for them to streamline these regulations to help boost supply. There's already been a lot of inflation, so you can't deal with all of that at the state level, but you can start to get rid of some of these other impediments that are keeping the supply offline. And we've got to not go after these sort of first-time home buyer tax credits and other things that Trump and Harris have talked about, because all that will do is boost demand and make prices go up even faster, okay? Number 8, U.S. House Speaker pledges to reform health care. In the news, House Speaker Mike Johnson has pledged to overhaul the Affordable Care Act if Trump wins the presidency, marking health care reform as a top policy agenda item. Discussions about the 2010 health care, known as Obamacare, often arise in the final stages of election cycles. My take on this is that we need major health care reform that brings the doctors and the patients together again, instead of having all these other third parties with insurance companies and primarily the government creating more problems throughout this. What you see is that nearly half the cost of our healthcare system, about $2.6 trillion of the $4.8 trillion that's spent on healthcare, is just on bureaucracy, regulation, red tape, and things of that nature, not on actual care that goes to people. This is one reason why it remains such a costly part of our economy, and quality of healthcare continues to go down. And if you want to expand it to all government, the Medicare for All program, as I've mentioned, is close to $44 trillion. Nearly $2 trillion of that is just if you had amnesty for the 11 to 12.5 million illegal immigrants that are across the country. So that's something that we need to look at. So the path forward for this then is to reducing government overregulation and empowering patients with greater financial and medical control is essential. And that's through, I think, health savings accounts, something that's pre-tax that allows for them to do what they need to do best and get rid of the bureaucratic waste and other things that are keeping us from being as prosperous as possible and healthy as possible. Because it should be about health care, not the system. All right. So with all that, thank you for watching again today. Please share this with your friends and family. Go out and give me a 5-star rating wherever you get this, and make sure to subscribe is what I was trying to say as well. You can find more insights at vanceginn.com, or go to my website or Substack newsletter at vanceginn.substack.com. Become a paid subscriber. I'd enjoy that as well. So until next time, let people prosper.